This podcast was recorded on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation.
Hello and welcome to The Real Story with Joe Hildebrand. It is the big one, the final show before the election, which we, of course, have already predicted the outcome of. We've had Sarah Harris reading the stars and telling us what the cosmos is saying about the election result. We've had the Prime Minister of Australia, Anthony Albanese himself, come on and talk about where the country is headed, what is going to happen on polling day. And soon we will have the greatest authority of them all, Timmy G. Tim Gleason, veteran campaigner for the ALP, veteran strategist. He's been doing elections for about 25 years, state and federal. He correctly predicted that Trump would win the US election when a whole bunch of people were saying there was no possible way. So he is a guru. He rides the kind of astral planes of political knowledge, and we will find out exactly where the Labor Party and the Coalition are going to land after Election Day. I want to talk about what happened on Anzac Day and how that feeds into not just the election, but also, Australia, who we are as a nation and the sort of stuff that we are prepared to tolerate or explain away in this country. Now, I am the last person in the world to get outraged about anything. I am absolute fearless advocate for free speech. This has made a whole bunch of sooky little triggered lefties hate me. And quite frankly, it's also now made a whole lot of sooky little triggered righties now hate me, because what happened on Anzac Day at the dawn service at Melbourne's Shrine of Remembrance was absolutely despicable. Absolutely shameful. It is something I have never seen nor heard of at any dawn service, it is something I've never ever seen or even heard of at any dawn service anywhere in Australia right throughout our history. And no one I've spoken to has seen anything like it either. And this was a bunch of protesters led by, or at least including, a bunch of known neo-Nazis, actual neo-Nazis, who booed during the dawn service as it was being opened with the welcome to country. Now, the dawn service is an incredibly sacred ritual for Australia. It is a funeral ritual. It is a remembrance ritual. It is a rite in which we commemorate the war dead. So it would be like booing at a funeral because you didn't like the eulogy. And that is what these people did. Now, of course, everyone has come out and said, oh no, it's totally inappropriate. We don't support what they did. But there's a few people who follow that statement with a but. And that to me is almost just as bad. So the people say, look, I don't agree with booing at the dawn service. Oh, that was terrible. But they kind of had a point. But they kind of sort of raised a few issues. But maybe we shouldn't have had the welcome to country there. Now, that to me is almost like saying, I don't support domestic violence, but she shouldn't have burnt the toast. Or saying on October 8, 2023, oh, look, I don't support what Hamas did, but, they do have a couple of pretty good points about, what Israel's been doing. And people actually said that, didn't they? People said, oh, no. Sorry for posting all those memes on social media, celebrating the people flying in and killing everybody on the kibbutzes. Oh, no, I don't support what Hamas did. I don't support that terrible terrorist act. I condemn all killing. But they do have a point that Israel is pretty bad. Now, that is an appalling kind of connection to make, to say, look, I don't support terrorism, but it's all in a good cause. And that is where a lot of people on the left have found themselves, and they've been rightly condemned by people who are pro-Israel. And they've been rightly condemned by conservatives, and they've been rightly condemned by sensible people in the middle who are just right about everything, like me. The difference is that when people on the right do it, they seem to think it's fine. I don't agree with all the booing at the dawn service. Oh, but they weren't all neo-Nazis. Some of them were just, regular folks. Or I don't agree with booing at the dawn service, but that welcome to country shouldn't have been there. Probably not the time to be making that point, I wouldn't have thought, because it kind of looks like you're on the side of the neo-Nazis, even though, of course, you're trying to sort of distance yourself from them. It seems like they keep kind of sidling right up next to you because you're both saying the exact same thing. And you're saying just after these animals have defiled our most sacred and profound and solemn national right, after they have defiled what is the most incredibly somber moment of national reflection on the Australian calendar, you've actually decided to say, yeah, well, the point they were making, I don't agree with their methods, but the point they were making, the bit they were trying to get to, oh yeah, that was actually fair enough. Don't agree with the way they got there, but they're heading in the right direction. That is the sort of equivocation we're seeing. And that is the sort of thing that I think a lot of people on the right, and again, these are people who I otherwise have a great deal of time and respect and affection for, but that I think is the trap into which they are falling. That is the cliff that they are plummeting off, where you just get so one-eyed, you get so much tunnel vision about something that enrages you so much, even though it probably doesn't affect you that much, it enrages you so much that you don't see that giant red line. You don't see the edge of the cliff that you've just run right over. And now, as a result of that, we've spent the last week of the campaign talking about whether or not there should be welcome to country at Anzac Day dawn services or other major events. That's exactly what the neo-Nazis wanted to happen. That was why they did that stunt. That was why they violated the most sacred boundaries of Australian national decency, because they wanted to put it on the national agenda and they wanted everybody to talk about it. And that's exactly what people are doing. They are doing the neo-Nazis' bidding, and they can call them neo-Nazis, or they can say they're not all neo-Nazis, or they can say, oh, we don't support what the neo-Nazis did, or we don't support what happened. But you are still doing exactly what they want. So I'll let that sit just there. But what impact does this have on the election campaign? Forget the fact that it's tearing apart Australia's moral fabric. Let's focus on the really important stuff, which is how many seats is it going to cost them? Well, I am pretty sure that this is the sort of thing that would, far from being the shot in the arm for Peter Dutton and the coalition that so many of his supporters and opponents of the Welcome to Country think it will be, I reckon this might actually be the final nail in the coffin, because every single person who is championing what Peter Dutton and others are talking about in, getting rid of the Welcome to Country at all these events, I'm pretty sure they're already voting for him. I'm not sure if there are too many undecided voters sitting on the fence going, oh, well, let me think. Didn't really like the working from home stuff, but yeah, I am getting a bit sick of all those Welcome to Countries. And maybe if someone would just stand up and get rid of all those Welcome to Countries, I could finally stop worrying about putting food on the table and putting a roof over my head and getting the kids to school every day, and I could sleep soundly at night knowing that there aren't as many Welcome to Countries being done as there used to be. I'm not sure if that voter exists. I'm pretty sure that anyone who really, really cares about this issue, and again, I'm fairly ambivalent about it myself. I much prefer to see real practical action when it comes to Indigenous advancement and making people's lives better. But I'm not sure that that person is just sitting there thinking, if only Peter Dutton would be stronger on Welcome to Country, I would change my vote from Labor to Liberal. I mean, is anyone out there? Does anyone think that that voter exists? Does anyone think there's someone who's undecided and was just waiting on whether or not someone would be harsher than the government on Welcome to Country? In fact, I think what has happened is that there is a confusion between, I suppose, noise and support. There's all this noise about welcome to country, and it gives them a bit of what they think is momentum and what they think is a kind of groundswell of support because everyone's suddenly talking about, which, need I remind you, is exactly what the neo-Nazis wanted. And they think, right, he's got his mojo back. It's just like The Voice. It's just like the Voice campaign where Peter Dutton was at his best and they said he couldn't do it. And they said that, it was inevitable and everyone wanted The Voice and it was, something that we were heading towards, and anyone who wasn't on board was a racist or a knuckle dragger or whatever. And Peter Dutton stood up, and he stood up for everyday Australians, and he fought The Voice, and he won. Where's that Peter Dutton? He's been missing in the campaign, but now he's back. He's strong, and he's standing up for true Australians and what true Australians believe in. In fact, the opposite is actually true, because by talking about something that most Australians are at best think of as a second order issue, Peter Dutton is not the Peter Dutton who was fighting The Voice and killing The Voice. Peter Dutton is The Voice, because the reason The Voice so failed was because the people who were propounding it, the people who were going out there and saying this is a really important thing that we need to do, sounded out of touch because it sounded like they were oblivious to or not paying enough attention to the cost of living crisis that was escalating in every single Australian household. So it sounded like they were obsessed with something that wasn't actually a first order issue with ordinary Australians. And that is what eventually brought it undone. And no one was telling them to stop, and no one was telling them to recalibrate or to hold off, because of course everyone around them was telling them, yes, this is the moment, this is your time, this is what needs to happen, this is what we must do as a nation. And that is exactly what everyone around Peter Dutton is telling him, and he is talking about and obsessing about an issue that the vast majority of Australians at best don't really care about that much. So the Peter Dutton who is coming out in the last week of this campaign isn't the Peter Dutton who killed The Voice. This Peter Dutton is The Voice. All the polls are pointing to a Labor victory at Saturday's election, but of course there's only one poll that matters, and that is the Timmy G poll. Tim Gleason, campaign strategist extraordinaire, Trump whisperer, Labor legend. How are you?
Pleasure to be here, Joseph. Very well.
There's always a moment, isn't there, sort of before an election, you and I, we talk all the time and we look at all the polls, you read all the stories, you talk to the people in the party who know all this stuff. And then just before the day itself, you think, holy f***, anything could happen. How are you feeling? What's your sense of where the election's at right now?
No, I think it's done. I think people have made their minds up. There's no 2019 sort of zag moment. I think it's over.
And obviously, if that zag moment was going to come, it would have been preempted by Penny Wong for reasons best known to herself, seeming to say to a podcast, those pesky podcasters, you just can't trust them, that the Voice was inevitable, that sooner or later we'd look back on the Voice debate and think, how are we even having a debate about this? Because now here it is. She's since said, oh, no, I wasn't talking about the Voice. I was talking about reconciliation generally, which I don't really buy. But that seemed to derail things a fair bit over sort of, Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, midweek, just as the government seemed to be really just driving home. How much of a distraction do you think that has been, and how much damage do you think it has caused?
Oh, look, maybe a touch, but I don't think it causes any damage. And because the opposition have been just making this week all about welcome to country,
Yep.
it basically got lost in the mist in the grand scheme of things. And so I think people have moved on. The people who are voting over The Voice or are voting over welcome to country or acknowledging our First Nations people, they're already voting for Peter Dutton or the Triumph of Patriots or One Nation. So I don't think it means a tinker's cuss, really.
And that's the interesting thing, because I think the coalition thinks they're onto a winner because, of course, everyone in their base says, yeah, this is what will win you the election. This is what will come home strong, because that's what they really, really care about. For most people, even people who think, oh, maybe it is a bit overdone or whatever, at best, it's a kind of second tier issue. And my sense is that every second you spend not talking about the cost of living is a second wasted. And so Dutton has been distracted by that. And then thanks to Penny Wong's comments coming out, Labor's sort of been dumped into this culture war that it was actually doing a very good job of sort of staying above. But you don't reckon they've been sucked down into the whirlpool by it?
No, and it's 3 days out, and I think the Prime Minister spoke at the press club today, and by all reports did very well. And I think Peter Dutton's out having young Charles somewhere in Chisholm, I think. So I think the world's just it's going to be hard for even him to make a,
Would you like to know a fun fact? Chisholm is one of the very few electorates that actually voted for The Voice. It voted in favour of The Voice. Yeah, that's right. And again, I think this is one of those things where, Melburnians, I think, are still kind of structurally progressive, and I think that they would be very embarrassed and ashamed about what happened at the Melbourne War Memorial, the Shrine of Remembrance, on Friday morning. And so I think, again, Dutton jumping out up and down and saying, hey, I don't agree with what those neo-Nazis did, but they kind of made a good point.
Yeah. And you've got to remember, too, I think this might even be the first, or really not too many elections where kids have been doing Welcome to Country now. They're probably since primary school. Those kids are probably in their early 20s now. They grew up with it. This isn't some
it's not shocking
thing that's come. I hear it every Friday at Albert Park Primary. And Albert Park Primary is the most Anglo-looking school you'll ever see. And the kids love their Welcome to Country. They have
all the most progressive inner city types are always the most Anglo. Yeah, they do it at our school as well. So let's get into
they've got the big flag poles for the Australian flag, the Aboriginal
Indigenous flag, Torres Strait Islander flag, the rainbow flag.
Henry said if I was to lose those flags, I'd lose my goalposts to kick the ball through. So they're not on a winner at all.
So let's get into the weeds then. Which seats do you reckon are in play? Which seats do you reckon Labor is at risk of losing, first of all? Albo said today that he plans on holding on to all 78. And as they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. But the polls are looking really strong for Labor. Do you think there is a chance they could actually hold on to all their seats, or are some definitely gone with the wind?
I think they can hold on to most of them. I really do. And I think you probably, if you look at Gilmore first up on the night, which will be polls finish at 6, there'll be numbers coming in not long after. If the Libs aren't getting big swings in Gilmore, it's in a world of pain. And the fact that Peter Dutton was campaigning in Gilmore a day or two ago is a horrible sign. Gilmore's,
0.02%. Yeah, this is Gilmore on the south coast of New South Wales, around sort of Nowra, and that's Shellharbour. That's sort of
he needs a 5% swing to win 19 seats, Peter Dutton. If he's in there with 3 days out, good luck trying to get 5% swings. So
that's right. I mean, if you think any seat like that, which is effectively at a dead even, that should fall over in a stiff breeze. If
they can't win Gilmore, if you look at Gilmore quickly, and even a seat like Bennelong, which is now Labor's seat but nationally Liberal, I think, and it's a good cross section, Bennelong, and it sort of highlights this campaign. The Lib candidates, just
handing
horrible
out chocolate to kids.
In more trouble. Has had more alleged fundraisers and everything. And if they're going badly in Bennelong and not doing really well in Gilmore, and if you look at a couple of Melbourne seats early on, which would be Aston, which Labor are basically renting after a by-election.
They should never have got. That's right. They should never have got Aston in the first place. And I think we can say that that's gone back to the Libs.
If you look at Chisholm and McEwen, if there isn't a big swings in those two seats, which will you'll see Libs are in a world of pain. If they can't win Chisholm and McEwen, that means they're not going to pick up anything in Victoria bar the rental that is Aston.
That's right. And there's talk, obviously, they'll pick up sort of quasi sort of Labor heartlandish seats like Hawke or Bruce, Gorton. You reckon they're all
No, I don't
safe?
think so. A lot of those areas voted against Labor, had swings against Labor, even though Labor got 53% of the two-party preferred vote in Victoria in 22, because that was the first election after lockdown. So a lot of those sort of true believers had a bit of a revolt. That was their first chance to vote against the Labor government. So they got 6 and 7% swings against them. So a lot of the Labor voters who protested, those margins already include those votes.
Right.
So
Gotcha. Yeah.
Peter Dutton's going to have to hold all those people and then swing a whole bunch more. And I've just got a gut feeling it's not going to be as bad as people think in Victoria.
And then moving over to South Australia, they've already got Boothby. Do they pick up Sturt, which is just sitting there on just a giant, big, fat 0.5% margin? It's just the most tantalising low-hanging fruit you can imagine. But
Yeah,
Labor's been going after it for...
It's like Sydney in a grand final. We keep getting there, but we never. The Swans. It's for some reason we just don't seem to win Sturt ever, even though Peter Malamascus is as popular as JFK, and it's a thin margin. For some reason, I don't know what it is. And even if you look at the bookmakers, the Libs are really heavily favourite to hold on to Sturt. So it just, mate. Oh,
There you go.
it's the Sydney Swans of South Australia.
As you said, we've been winning Sturt for 35 years.
Yeah.
Going over to WA now. WA, again, at the last election, the most improbable stronghold for Labor, always historically has been seen as a more conservative state, but because of the huge popularity of Mark McGowan, there was that big red wave that came late on election night in 2022. And it looks like, I mean, both leaders are spending a lot of time over there, but it looks like Labor's vote might be holding up there.
Yeah, it looks like there was a new seat created, Bullwinkle, which even though it was a Rocky and Bullwinkle, even though it was it's a marginally held Labor seat, the sort of acceptance was that's on a high base vote from last time. The Libs should be able to take that and take back Tangi or something. But it looks like it's going to be status quo in WA, and so that's a fantastic result for Labor, especially after a result in 22. To hold all those seats would be an amazing result.
And Bullwinkle obviously has got the former Liberal MP Ian Goodenough running as an independent in it, and as a bit of an FU to his former party for not endorsing him, he's giving his preferences to Labor. So that's another little sting in the tail, which should help it along.
Yeah. So I think both parties expect not much movement in WA, South Australia, or the NT for that matter. You know, so
just 2 seats there, Solomon and Lingiari. Lingiari's on a nothing margin, but you reckon they'll hold on to that as well?
Yeah, apparently that it was in danger, and Jacinta Price has really helped out in Lingiari. Right. She's come to the party in Lingiari.
Queensland, I've been saving the best for last. At least we haven't forgotten about you, Tassie. I'm just talking about the mainland here. Queensland could be very, very fun on election night. Labor is obviously going after the Greens seriously in 2 seats, Brisbane and Griffith. And I'm told that they're pretty confident that Brisbane is already in the Labor column, and Griffith would be the most delicious victory because, of course, the Greens took that from Labor and put in their most insufferable candidate, Max Chandler Mather, he of the hyphenated surname and the hyphenated housing policy. How do you reckon they're going to go in Griffith?
I think they'll win Brisbane. I'm not sure about Griffith, but they've got a more than puncher's chance. But I think the other seat we should look at is Leichhardt.
Oh, I was about to say, yes. Yeah. Warren Entsch retiring, very, very popular local member, huge sort of personal following. He's gone, so that shaves a few points off it.
And I think the only time he lost was under the glory years of Kevin Rudd in 07.
Rudd slide.
Great man, you know. So I think there's a world in which Labor can win 2 of those 3 seats, which would be just an awful result for Peter Dutton. For an opposition Queensland leader to actually go backwards in Queensland is just...
Well, while we're on that, do you reckon they're going after Dutton in his own seat of Dixon? Is that just a mind game, or do you think there's a serious chance that they could actually pull
No, I think he'll hold his seat in Dixon. But to have to talk about it's just to have to answer questions about your own seat must be infuriating when you want to take over the
That's right. Of
country.
course, ominously, the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada just lost his own seat because he was perceived as being too close to Donald Trump.
It would be a terrible result if Peter Dutton doesn't pick up any seats, loses his own seat. It would, awful.
So, and then we go down to Tassie. The Libs obviously have Bass and Braddon. Bridget Archer is the member for Bass. She's kind of like an opposition to her own party. She's very outspoken. She often crosses the floor. So you would think any protest vote against the Libs already goes to Bridget Archer, who is a Lib. Do you reckon they get Bass?
Well, they'll definitely hold Lions, which at one stage, well, so like everything else 6 weeks ago or 2 months ago was Labor are not, I wouldn't use the word optimistic, but what's a word that's not quite optimistic, but not
cautiously optimistic or quietly confident?
No. Almost optimistic, It's sort of maybe if things break their way, they can win Bass.
Wow. That would be amazing. And Lions are obviously safe now, and the salmon farmers of Macquarie Harbour can also sleep easy at night after Anthony Albanese overrode yet another decision by Tanya Plibersek, which that'd be a frosty dinner party, wouldn't it, if you were seated between those two?
Oh, I like them both, Joseph. I'd have the
So do I. Love them both. So basically, once we've done this sort of around the grounds, we're looking at Labor probably losing a couple in Victoria, I think we can say.
I think, possibly two or
like
three.
Aston, McEwen.
Aston, they theoretically on the pendulum now, they hold Menzies because of the redistribution. So the Libs, that still count as losing a seat, even though the Libs will hold that. Probably lose Aston and may lose one of Chisholm or McEwen. But that could be about it. And from where it was 2 months ago to end up there, which is basically Menzies is their seat anyway. Aston's a rental. So you're looking at possibly picking up one seat.
Two.
Yeah, possibly two. Even if you pick up just McEwen and Chisholm, you've picked up 2 seats after all of that.
Yeah, and then Labor possibly / probably maybe gets 2 in Queensland. So we're back at 78.
They win, as the pendulum says, they keep Bennelong, which is counted as a notionally Liberal seat at the moment. I think the Libs will lose Bradfield to the Teal candidate there. So all of a sudden you're looking around the country. Tassie, there's an opportunity, either status quo or Labor pick one up. And all of a sudden you look around the country and you say, I can't see a path where Albo doesn't get majority government.
So I was asked on Sky News on a Monday night my pick for a number of seats. And again, you don't want to be overconfident or too cocky or whatever, but you look at it, like you say, if you actually just look at all this stuff, people keep talking about a hung parliament and minority government. I don't see where they are seeing that. And I said, I reckon Labor in the high 70s, and I said the coalition, might even just sort of crack 60 or so from where it's at. What is your thought?
The bookmakers now bet on groups of 5 seats, and of course we know how. So the shortest price Labor are between 76 and 80 seats, which is about even money favourite. So all the smart money is having Labor between 76 and 80 seats.
So that's a majority, obviously.
Yeah, which is a majority. And there's a world, it has to be a perfect world where everything collides, everything goes their way, and Labor could end up with 80, but I'd say they're more likely between 76 and 78.
Yeah, 80's just greedy,
Yeah.
You want there to be a bit of a fight in it. And then the coalition, do you reckon, again, I almost surprised myself when I was saying it, but if you look at all the seats, you think, well, how are they going to win more than a sort of handful?
Yeah, well, they'll lose one in New South Wales to the independent in Bradfield. They'll pick up a couple in Victoria, obviously, but that could be offset by losing Leichhardt. And there's a world in which they come out 1 or 2 positive that what's he on now? 57?
58, is it?
58? It could struggle to get a 6 in front of it, which is crazy.
That is
absolutely just. I think we were on this podcast a couple of months ago, and we said if Albo can just get to 68, he might just hold on. I mean, Albo will get to 68 with people not handing out. Like,
he really is just. He's the luckiest man in Australia, isn't he?
Well, we must say, I know it's this has been the worst campaign by the Liberal Party I've ever seen. I've been part of some terrible campaigns in my time, but this thing is just horrific. Like, we had work
coming
from
out
home,
and dumping a signature policy.
servants.
That's right. In the middle of an election campaign saying, terribly sorry, we were absolutely, completely and utterly wrong about this. We are now going to do the opposite of what we just promised was great for the nation. I mean, I have never seen that in my entire life.
His press conferences are getting worse every day. You can tell he's getting shown numbers every morning, and it's just
soul-destroying.
I have to face... There's been Lib bus crashes in seemingly every other day. A Lib bus runs into a bridge or runs into a polling booth. Just horrible. And I heard the story, and it was there's posters in Victoria, Jacinta Allen, Anthony Albanese, face-to-face. Don't let what's happened in Victoria happen to... Unfortunately, they put them all over Brisbane as well, which...
Yeah, I don't understand.
Just by, it's just been... Somebody said, what would you rather do? Would you rather be on the Liberal campaign or be with Stevie Wonder in a one-on-one putt-putt shootout with Tiger Woods and Greg Norman? I said I'd rather take my chances with Stevie Wonder.
You've got to take your chances with Stevie Wonder.
Championship against the Shark and Tiger.
Well, Timmy G, on that note, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being right about everything all the time, as I'm sure
so I'm thinking
will be. About
76 to 78, which makes it 77, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, I said high 70s, so we are as one. We have achieved clarity. We have self-actualised.
Rabbitohs in the lodge for another 3 years, Joseph.
Magnificent. I can't think of anywhere they would rather be. Thanks heaps, Timmy. Love your work, my friend.
Pleasure.
And look, that is all we have time for this week. It's been yet another very special edition, so I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, go out on Saturday, vote early, vote often. Just kidding, don't vote often, that's illegal. Hope you have a fantastic day. Celebrate democracy, eat a sausage. If you want to get in touch with me, you can slide into my DMs on the gram at Joe_Hildebrand, or you can drop us a line at The Real Story at novapodcast.com.au. You can leave us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. Only positive reviews are accepted. You know that already. I'm going for a perfect 5. And of course, you can catch everything I have to say. Oh my God, I'm just sick of myself. You know what? Don't. Everything I have to say every day during the election campaign, across all the News Corp mastheads, online, everywhere. I'll have a bit to say on election night and afterwards as well. And until then, I'll see you when it's all over next week. Bye-bye.